Great. Cool.
Authentic exchanges is impossible as all anonymous. Assume the form of the film with script. Everything is pre-coded as the distinction between film and war is rendered null. Now the image of power is the power of the image. The image of the military is in that way no distinct from its physical reference. Images are fully militarized. The military is fully virtual. The Gulf War marked the disappearance of war. Pornography about war is total integration as the media spectrum. The global military apparatus now parodies itself, having achieved total global control, limiting all true antagonism. It has now become orbital. This reality principle system of Western global power takes leave of this earth, parodying itself in acts of gratuitous violence, epitomized by the banal pornography of the Abu Ghraib. This is the age of war porn, wherein we no longer know where the pornography ends, or to draw the line between immense imposed system of semiotic exchange and global system of militarization. American military aid has been taken over by its own power, revealing its shallow soulless void, pushing itself towards its own self-annihilation. Those who live by the spectacle will die by as the goal of the will to transparency of global military power is no longer to kill or to win, but to abolish the enemy, to extinguish the light of our sky. That's Shapiro on 14. Devastation which kept away from our perceptions of simulation technologies, endless military service for reducing the change of non-armed property, complex quality, speed of information, things lose distance, or imploded in real time. These space theories become hyperspace that belongs to Western metaphysical conjunction reality used in form of liberation. Who has become the nation rejoice, we get flip, rage, fight, and flying, we start again, the enemies of physical world installation, look on the rage, which man, locked, dark, now, war machine, was a property of our medicine, media become part of terror, surveillance, public become terror, then introduced new political microphysics, simulacrum, natural offer, value, developed on the basis of natural use of the government, because of model fire station, radiates in all directions, that one contradicts to become vulnerable at a single point, that launch, I love you, virus, devastating networks, terrorism is everywhere, shockwave, there is a panic information, so that's going to find out who did it, exercise, the minimal function of the real, the victims were provided the data game, killing, electronic killing, going, participating, self-establishing, pornographic, images are integrated into war, they don't represent it, images of group did, or outside technology, images, the tribe, self-technology, races, images are tend toward the pornographic. Now, this is part and parcel with a new era of communication, the endless appeals to objectivity and evidence, near and dear to the status quo, have lost all weight in the world of alternate facts and fake news, attempts to decipher the world through transparent metaphysics, prove to not only be futile, but to be infinitely destructive, as the question to know everything merely reveals all that we can never know, meaning is contrary to its own intention, information, and only crumbles to the void of its own illusion. That's Shapiro 17. Yeah. Pointing out that Trump is a liar doesn't then support his discourses. In fact, Trump is a candidate of hyper-reality for the transpolitical era simulation. Truth is not where Trump is more advanced. Truth is not objective. It is constructed to preserve truth of a parent false sovereign who knows by trading the quantum system transcend true. Things of point meaning by political something as being true to Trump says nothing can be done about New York Times cannot do anything about it. Evidence media. Evidence will have an effect on its own intended truth doesn't appear beneath information. Is Trump's and Muslims were solving 9/11. He's 100% right. It's treated when truth event did not take place. Yet the words carry force in the culture of images. Okay, transports revealers location from event secret to be true when images are exchangable. The images become hyperreal, meaning becomes hyper meaning. What could documentation could increase? True, the effect is opposite when documentation are everywhere. They are decoupled from what they are enhanced. This is the logic that's operated for media to go into the hyper referentiality. The whole business is not functioning. And purpose lost. We are in the era of simulation. The new truth is not all new truth constitutes hyper reality, which is its own reality. We have to know codes. Long live the new truth. Trump defeated deniability. The media analyzes what cannot understand the dream life is more real than wake life. Nervous breakdown of order. Now this is the digital fog of war. The code in the very attempt to make the world mean something, to sublimate the evil of irrationality. Mystery is exactly what terminates in its opposite. We're all gorge, meaning in the will to transparency, the desire to become cartographers, to destroy all that is enigmatic, causing implosive violence as we impose meaning on the map of the globe. You guessed it, Archer in degree 14. Objects of war represent interests of disposition toward violence. The result of much of the secure will to meaning to locate violence, not just an investment but representation to make the hope for transparency and liberation tether to a real reality ends up being self-defeating. Mechanisms of seek clearly the fog of war end up reproducing it. Simulacrum produces reality affects everything turned into information becomes the idea of endless speculation. Images of war, then during mass global and different exchange. Everyone seeks to produce meaning where Gorsh meaning is killing us, it's crisis nihilism, later produce the opposite of core order. The flooding meaning is a fanatic meaning, the fan short production of the end results in over abundance of signs, images of reality, hyper reality things appear more real than reality itself. Of the Western global way of form must remain unworthily, foggy, inwardly driven, the part of the system, the church, and any form of negativity, singularity, including death, though it moves like agitation, produces chain reaction, distress, capacity to resist. Now, contention 2 is contention 3, and advantage 3 is solvency. When I speak of time, the fact is it is not yet. When I speak of a place, the fact is it has disappeared. When I speak of the one in C, the fact is it's already dead. When I speak of time, the fact is it's no more. Part 4 is even more solvency. Plan. The United States ought not provide charity cannibalism to the code. Now, Nigel Ward once told me that reports that say something that hasn't happened are always interesting to him because, as we know, there are known things things that we know. We know there are also known unknowns. This is to say that there's some things we do not know, but there are also unknown unknowns. The ones that we don't know, we don't know. Now, I don't have to defend meaning. The form of meaning is always unhappy and destroys itself, which is great because any idea that cannot be defended deserves to disappear. Thus, the 1AC is a radical thought about military aid and operational theory fiction that cultivates illusory and surreal readings of the resolution and effusive play with language. Srel and 14. Production of war, science matters in form wars, just one of the many fields in which reality sets up periodical wars, self-wars in this industry, viewers of targeted power, murder, science against which graffiti, racing, anti-Semitic, counterforce laws are with the kinds of sophisticated products and information, hostage media intoxication, to believe in the war, Bozier intensified back against this terrorism, because the holy wall, theoretical discourse, he faces theoretical terrorism, and reciprocity, gamification name, for the small fluidity, power changing situation, but radically reversing into an impact, because it's to create a different reality through imaginary, and for systematic reality, could use of imaginary force to creating illusion, that the shit thinking of performing active system under parallel thought, does not just penetrate mystery theory, is the exact opposite way we normally accept. They would not recognize reality, create an illusion that something like a playful semi-argument of theory based thereby to reduce reality to discover reality to us beyond masking conscious self as decode reality was a con trapping us who quicker than reality poetic anthropology there are first the art of writing does not seek to describe reality that rather create a solution to create the love and make any matter when it's clear essentially the false concerns the world symbolic issues to strategy to introduce a different view of things common perceptual war contrast against the aestheticized reality change the rules to give it diverting the game away from its own truth that might have been the uniform process of reality production shadow receiving self-evident into pieces reverse our view of the world shifting our perspective by introducing something new and unsettling into the order of things. Don't drop our university K. Anarchist use 10. University service social conditioning machines of concentration privilege, hyper-educated society can only display intensive traditions that not be oblivious complicit destruction social that's been opposite for institution meaning for all life meaning we and rise 9 years enrolling in a acropolis rivals know the cemeteries of a nation and absent fixation zombies they invented themselves counterfeits every system reintroduces death which there is no liberation system abolished by only pushing it to the hyperlogic students are oblivious to the system of staying alive in the university stripped of all that makes life worth living. Stripped of all that makes life worth living.
Are you ready to start?
Yeah.
Is all information meaningless?
It's not that information is meaningless, but that information produces less meaning.
Okay, so when you see the room number on tab, how do you know to come to this?
Because words carry force.
What does that mean?
Our argument is just a criticism of the ability for information to affect political processes in a way that we can chart out with the one-to-one correspondence between our intention and the result.
What words does that entail? Did you say it's a criticism of words?
No, I just said it's a criticism of our ability to create a one-to-one correspondence between our intention attached to information.
You said words carry force, or which words would carry force?
Words. Words have meaning, but information generates
Which words
less meaning.
carry force?
Every word probably has some sort of meaning.
Okay, that's fine. What does the ballot do? Does the ballot have meaning?
The ballot. We think that there is probably a net benefit to voting affirmative, but we've not attached any sort of telos to what the affirmative wants to accomplish.
So then what is a W on tab room?
So there's a difference between like net benefit and objective. One has intention and the other doesn't.
Okay. Can you explain the distinction between the two?
I just said, yeah, one has intention and the other doesn't. So our argument is that the affirmative would be good because it reveals the absurdity of communicative process.
What does voting have to do?
I was just explaining that. But our argument is not that voting affirmative is for any particular reason, other than we think that we have a good strategy.
In a world where the same affirmative has been read like multiple times,
because our solvency
even last
is like
year was the
our
exact
solvency
same
is
thing.
not we're destroying debate.
So what does the app do reading it in this round?
I just told you we think that the judge should vote F if our strategy is a good one for resisting charity cannibalism and the violence of the code.
Okay, have there been times in debate where voting F has meant more than winning?
Voting F has meant more than winning.
And getting like the W on top?
Maybe. I don't really know what you want out of that question. Like,
okay, but there are times where winning means more than just getting like a better record on tab room.
winning means more than getting a better record on tab room. Well, like the F is not about winning. We have a strategy. Do you think that we have some good ideas that will defend? Because any idea that cannot defend itself deserves to disappear.
Okay. What is I want you to tell me what reading the app in this round uniquely has done.
Uniquely, there's nothing unique. I mean, as you already pointed out, this app has been read before, but like our argument is not that this app is collapsing debate, or that like, but we do think that revealing the absurdity and irrationality at the heart of communicative processes
what
is
new
something that's
absurdity
valuable.
have you revealed in this round?
I guess like, we'll just say that using information, like we'll think that there's irrationality at the heart of all rational communicative processes, which is the entire one I see about why Trump, like objectivity and evidence have lost weight in the world of Trump.
I'll set up the dot. It's one off these. Tell me whenever.
Oh yeah, good.
The only ethical way of modern policy that displayed demand for the end of the world, so the crime board of the legislation, turning vertigo, continued genocide, to the gram is the one he sees called for large institutional acts of fundamental fortification, whites on the same match, suicide by diversion, books on death, how the policy, the global anti-black regime opposed to the operative questions of society, very the black body, the side of social products, will have become dead by some near injection, better about various subjectivity, Wilderson, 10. Their gram is like the gram of better modern, they draft attention on to this time of view, like the province of the advance, unprecedented world, watching think acting to this world, the world was unethical. Repair the most of the shifty, slave destructive use and global antagonism would be dismantled for the wicked better self with important conflict approach to level antagonism, American right question to go to the heart of political ontology and speak of the question after radical scholarship. We're not sure the use be overturned rather when and how ethically accountable to the great humanity values of the black man, the American Indian women, the weather, and the ground progress cannot dismiss revolution. Death through our blackness was the question of virtue, radical and progressive question of the light, and great black liberation, armies will navigate to time where the crazy shadow paths ready gone, the voices that exercise the political landscape, the field better suspect to imagine social terms of the rubric of the approach to the antagonism of urgency, which are going to anti-revolution, which is not divided into the obliteration, one of the political discourse, and non-political program, structure, suffering, and approach. Theory perspective is not just sick with the illness to Western nostalgia, but also ignores ways that exorbitant the anti-black and the and troubles any notion of human or value to see black as the ultimate opposite. Barrett 99. The trajectory of the critical opportunity, movement of political economy, the positive use of these values, and our radical achievement to the point of reversing this medium labor demand double potentiality is the same as the logical realm which the concept of production and defined rationality, sociality, purpose for many ironic relations towards the value of these forces, so I give the aims of analysis, but judgment together psychological about decided which a man is needed of nothing. They seem to look to present which comes to the metabolism, change fragility, festival, and also distribution, non-value direction, eradicated all rights. News ritual arrangement of the process of getting fashion after being raised black and white documents the relation between violence and hyperbolic fashion, violence, direction, across the value, elaborating binary, and value, devalue, is not always merely clear of physical terms determined inside it, and outside high and low, up and down, clean, dirty, mischief, and naively commanding, and the command of value, studied nomination, inversion, space, multiplicity, except blowing toys by the situation without the mind, dirt involves affections of relation of order, disorder, when there's dirt is byproduct, systematic order, and classification, matter, so first order involved rejecting inappropriate elements, ideas, dirty, strange, and symbols, and prompts to link it with morality, symbolic system, purity, and the attempt to find meaning is anti-black. Warren 15. Meaning itself is anti-black, facts of a word absurdity, existential absurdity, meaning for the word, meaning this is all there, the very structure, meaning signified, signification, sign of anti-black, the middle path, represents signifying process, also instantiation, meaningless, sign as foundation, meaning social existence, meaningless, anti-black, mass organized modern world, any meaning to the possessive absurdity that black embodies as fleshing sign of the anti-black world, attention consider the hope and fear, the assets of fantasy to play with the black body, the tool blacks were created to destroy the sign itself. Warren 18. The humans fantasize the power of balance, absolute sovereignty, power of unleashed to fill an empty space, and certain what the image thinks is to repair to see on channel, logical bonds, the image and access feature, continue metaphysical holocaust situated within the greater society, more than semantic and iconic, hold on within collective path to black being residence, semiotic to command, and what the extent of the greater life and signify this respected of unstigma on round, signifies the problem, it does not exist, but signifies like a real reference, and this exposing ontological presumption upon which semiotic this field is predicated, the black marker, the obliteration of the sign of butcher, and other postmodern semiation, minus this fantastical sign that exists for obliteration, structure and sign of the function of a black world, nonsense, sign buried deep in the global unconscious, which psychoanalysis, semiotics, and only version would never quite penetrate, playing as the innocuous, is vicious form of Jonah, weapon destruction, toy, and capture, they would collapse to the same degree in the planetary matching and destruction sign of the image, speed, and philosophy, and fantasy, what is played with them, is nothing philosophical desire to give form to the black formlessness, and answer what is black being cathartic to fantasy, conscious, and intersecting between neurological, fantasy, cognitive, and black, and both ends, which puts pressure on the dream and on the world, into the real world, and the unconscious, inadequate, represent condensation, placement, or love with any sign, except for not simple, and the sharp fantasy is all the distinction between real and fantasy, not just because blackness is found on both sides, but also because the free black doesn't exist when you start. And the alternative to direct one he sees other distinction and terror, black and active race of mythology, being black, mode, negative, truth, black is the best way to shrink civil society, rather than a problem faced by civil society. Section 11. Black substance of gender, rational, by social society, especially black, and way to get deep in the problem, identity, close that rather remaining reaction, insist on the gene, even if it doesn't matter, remaining culture, remaining acceptance of language, if you're able to cross between black, down, very black, that's not what it means, either do the business of the black, nothing after there is no black, the black not by the side, you can not the research conversation, change rate system, replace the black, the black not after the house was the celebration black, and when I see any firm close possibility, radical question about this, not a suicide ratio, adjusting black party. Let's skip this part. The role of the ballot is for the debate of first best diagnosis about the participant on anti-black when they're starting from the they don't get to weigh their affirmative case. Presume negative. Obviously, they already conceded in process that reading different this round does nothing unique. They've already conceded that all the offense should have already happened. Everything they've done is predicated on the past rounds they have read, which means that there's no unique offense coming from this round, which is an easy reason for you to presume that even if they have made criticism at large, there's nothing new, no new exposure that they have made of the world at large. That means you should vote affirmative in this round, vote negative, vote out if information dissuasive. They're in charge of more information, basic counterproductive pieces, similar to they can make communication about their different pieces. They're trying to make their communication trustworthy through additional simulation. The speech acts a copy of Michigan, which is a copy of K-Herms that meets the 1 liberties from New York, or 4 debates held. Your often put opinions come from KGB, only these actions really be outside the watch by the government against each and again effective affect. 5 to also avoid caution and certain language debate, also communicate faster and way totally untenable normal side we live in, already being right now type of really complicated and codified actions go to your health. And the after the double turn positioning, the 1 sees the weight on my meaning representation of the imposition of meaning that references to the claim to oppose to Bricks 3. The methods when they were system within no interfere with its code, they are mimicking actually affect by the faking perverting them, problematization, meditation, and insulting establishing capacity of perverting, mimicking, meditation, separately interpret the record of transformation, radical mobilization, that what's good and identity for the problematization, trying to mean to display what's good, review the meaning, tells our front and first, explaining that our team would imply that once communication, the code social system is not that American codes we reaffirm that those interpreting mirrors inputs their code, but understanding the method of approach avoid to once avoid their job, so show meaning or sign and establish a purpose method, and even have a change of voice approach or effect when this happens, that is used over something that negate for the approach that world of simulations, knowledge of we are choosing colonize it, destabilize the identities, rational destruction of native life, load grounded 4. Fluid boundaries, relative differences, so watching record world simulation, federation, protected reality, of rise of Atlantic, culture, probably interest in thought, industrial food, with the advantage, indigenous people, federation, the vote, language, food, identity, rational, humanity, structure, trouble, life, moderate, provide indigenous communities, theoretic ground, certain claims they colonize people, smart, using subjugated, provide the Indian is neither freedom, transgress borders, different, remain captives, colonize, so postmodern option, not protected against culture, and argument, question, protest, critique does not generalize to these that all information production is perspective, Wilkin 95. Voter met the media could have a real estate error, fellowship, commentary, reverse, threatened, counter, shaper, media, persuade, only critique, that is teaching, there's no other reality, or piece of description where the media work holds up, but to go from there and suggest taking position on invented by community, mystified the media, so market, mistaken, just one word, was either expected, but it's a sort of state, but everyone can see master starting to take place, the egos on our we must not be deceived by taking moral statement and must engage in a postmodern one-upmanship and original events, say that more virtual than events, and so these public intellectual media assess critical and major political and legal go for but wants to live in a virtual reality, go for how to general paralysis of intellectual with meaning intellectual fetish and debate because of lack of affiliation from public standards, not also mere lack of reality still exists. That's it, it should take into account people whose lives are actually affected by the image. Black percent voters are really pro outrage, general skepticism, finds there's nothing wrong about America, it is not also mere lack of repetition in the public world, not from a shock and private cinema. We hear from 9 minutes action, nobody says skeptical across the issues. The independent voting issue here that you should flag. Their attempt to create a perfect theory brushes over actual mindset is happening in the real world and says that everything is simulation, that nothing is real. You should hold them to that. You should drop them for that because they ignore what the real world mindset is going on. They concede that there's some forms of meaning. Our argument is that debate space is good to talk about things like anti-blackness, a theory that has not become mainstream like
You just said that anti-blackness is not the anti-blackness case has now become mainstream like Bojaert. Why is that true?
I think a discussion of the scholarship has not been thoroughly engaged with, and there are better ways to have that based on what is happening in the
I don't think that really answers my question. If you said that the burden of the app is to create some sort of unique offense, then what unique offense is there to the alternative? I guess, like, what does you reading this criticism do?
Sure. So there is one, the discussion that has happened in this round and the interaction with the links to the K. Additionally, I think there's some value in the debate that we've had, which probably...
So why is a discussion of imperial violence not important?
Well, I think based on the way the 1AC is framed, there has to be...
like Western racism, like...
Sure. Independently, I just think you should lose for being anti-black on top of that.
Alright, well, you haven't proved that yet, but that's fine. But that also just doesn't answer my question. Like, that's just... why is denying objectivity good?
Sorry, can you say it again?
Okay, I guess, like, why is objectivity good?
Our argument is that theory about anti-blackness and how we frame it in the world, and that form is good to analyze.
How does that answer my question, like, at all?
Say the question one more time.
Why is objectivity good?
Yeah. We recognize blackness as an antagonism. That is a good way to view the world.
Okay. So why Why should you win for recognizing blackness as an antagonism?
Because it is a better way to approach the discussions of the 1HC.
Okay, so if I win that the 1HC's discussion is good, is that a reason to vote F?
If you win the 1AC is good, yes.
Okay. What is blackness?
Blackness, a descendant of the Middle Passage.
Your theory of what? What is your theory of power?
Yes, so our argument is there are three tenets of ontology, and that these forms of ontology shape the way that blackness is viewed in civil society.
Okay, so what is blackness? You just said that like blackness is descendants from the Middle Passage.
Yeah, sure. So civil society would probably recognize blackness through phenotypical because the skin color would mark how other people view blackness in civil society, and that is what sets the stage for things like how gratuitous violence.
What is a catacrystic fantasy?
Where does that mention?
Did you not read Ontological Terror? That's just like you said. You should not read. And you want to say your discussion is good? Like, nice. Yeah, actually, like, I just don't have any more questions after that. I'll take some prep.
Wilderness and Warren. Two different species.
Yeah, so you read a Warren evidence.
The world is structured by systems of hyperreality that are always already focused on the accumulation of meaning and information into the space we now exist in the realms of more and more fake news to the point where information is diluted out thesis, claiming that debate has become a space where we carnivalize and cannibalize on suffering as scripted pornography screening, the impact of the will to transparency, which functions through the logic of the code, which is this act to lock down all non-coherent identity through information by revealing it. The one in C might seem radical against us on the one face, but in fact they are merely radical on the level of content, but not radical on the level of form, on the form of exchange, which is what you should use to frame your ballot. There may be new signs and symbols, but those signs and symbols are within the logic of the code, which make them compulsive things like ROM, so especially all unknown marking, a roll for black and test for the alternative, which is our impact of total war total. Annihilation is everything reduced to an information glove. They don't know what cards in the one key. Want to see try to claim the moral high ground by saying that Wilson and Warren are different, but they don't even know which right now they say presumption. However, you conceded the frame cross experience of the frame is just as long as we went at the 1AC's methodology and challenge the dominant form of communication is something that's valuable. You should vote affirmative. It's not that we're unique or that our presentation is something that's collapsing debate. You should just vote F to vote next, vote F. It solves their offense because it's a net better disruption. It's not a question of anything new, but rather you've said that newness and meaning is what is the general point of anti-blackness on the K page, which means that this is a double turn with your offense. This is the reason why you should vote affirmative. We reveal the absurdity of the system to force it to confront its own colonial violence, which is the only way we should acknowledge complicity. It's the reason why we solve the criticism. It's the reason to vote affirmative. You say political processes solve the app. Say political processes are anti-black via your evidence, which is the reason you don't get this argument. You say this reps evidence, this is re-evidence goes to F. You should just read the card and completely ignores the part where it says that our theory is still useful to explain the logic of semi-capitalism. Now you say that denial of objectivity is bad. Objectivity is bad because denial of objectivity is bad. Objectivity is bad is because it allows blackness to be encapsulated within a frame of difference. When terms become merely opposable, that is when they lose their singularities, which is our thesis claim that applicable to the critique. You say it's not all spectacle, not in the context of debate in the way that ensure information is spectacularized in order to win the battle, which is the reason as to why you should affirmative force them to confront this fact, because they have assumed that the communicative form in which they have presented all these arguments is neutral. It's not, it's ideological, which is why only the affirmative has an impact. Only the affirmative is able to disrupt that communicative logic. You say people are affected by the image. Yes, this is because we are in the hyper-real. You say it's an independent voting issue because we are a perfect theory. They are a perfection of theory too, and also we've acknowledged that our theory is imperfect. It's theory fiction, which is the only way which we can cultivate an illusion and commit to a metaphysics of mystery, which is good. Critique. Permutation, both jurisdictions, and symbolic exchange structures will have been the economy of anti-blackness. This is the best card you'll ever read. It's still up. See, 17. Black life is lived inside a white hyperradical. By this I mean black life is lived inside a constituent white fiction which concrete itself as a fact. Blackness exists as a symbol of death, but it is not white hyperreality. It fixes blackness as a sign of pathological fixation. White hyperrealism permits black death. He subsumed by simulation by each and every analytic account where the whiteness in the world white. The white will subject blackness to pressure over two responses that he uses that violence to evidence further such as blackness and human blackness is trapped trapping when it's saying it's trapped because of the trappedness of black. Extension locations with aggressions index to white words, so our unification black hyperrealism importance of the symbolic symbol structures, the liberal body still study, in fact, that anti-black paradigm symbolization is everything like Buller's time and interest in the symbolic value of whiteness, absence of blackness in the world of hyper-reality. Blackness is lived in the hyper-realness and hyper-intensification over representation of symbiology that dictates the coercive violence of black non-existence and white being black and therefore globally black symbolic change that extended itself over the terrain of the 127, which can be noted between real and non-real. Now, IRP's analysis of form over content, the ontological way, even if blackness is ontological, the way in which we articulate these things are situated and determined via capitalism as an information exchange, which justifies permutation due to that or forms of their content. Revolutionary politics today decide their investment into debate is capable of turning blackness into a vehicle to civil society, turns black bodies into fungible objects, and sustain their fantasy of being a true revolutionary. I even hear his ability to call me anti-black and cross-lace, but then not know it. Their evidence is about this turns the K because they repeats black fungibility in exchange for passivity from non-black bodies. We saw your impact desire to disavow the world of transparency, also reasons why colonizers just sought to explore Africa, explore the Americas in the first place. Just sort of co-option. Just said, I'll answer their links. Their first link evidence is just in the context of violence, the violence of value being immaterial. Our 1AC explicitly recognizes, which means that you say we're a fantasy to play with the black body. All of our analysis about this is you and not us. We're only a signification of a commitment to a metaphysics of uncertainty and illusion and unknowability, which solves your alternative better. Your alternative is the assignment of rules and turns blackness into an opposable term, which was impacted on the case page.
The K is a floating P can resolve the entirety of 1AC. If I win any risk of the offense that result, the permutation goes when you should grant when the permutation often when is that the knowledge production in this round is good or that debate is good faith. If I answer the content and context argument, the form and content argument, that's sufficient enough for you to vote negative. There's also an independent voting issue dropped on the case. The materials not included. Prove a net benefit to the permutation, to prove a net benefit to the floating P. The question of sequencing and how we frame our discussion. The knowledge argument. Our knowledge is good. Discussing blackness, radical black power, the place outside conventional academic space is good. It does not enter into discussion. After present remains the fringe theory. Academia provides uniqueness for endorsing the alternatives. Education knowledge production is outside of conventional space and creates new forms of knowledge. Interrogation of anti-blacks within debate space uniquely good because it allows us to identify instances of denied lived experience in exchange for the perfection of theoretical critique. The argument was dropped and is an independent read. You can cross-apply the case argument to this, and which also proves that our discussion of anti-blackness is good because it still allows us to focus on the real world violence that is happening, something that the critique cannot access on the content, on the form argument. The debate space is a good place to have this discussion. All the arguments scholarship are based on traditional scholarly writing. Debate is the only activity that encourages politically conscious people to challenge each other and engage in effective discussion. Frame the round three debate as a unique space in contemporary America. Debate refused to engage in the sign economy that Baudrillard criticized rather than regurgitate state analysis like CNN news panel. Debate over identity with the proliferation, meaning that is the absolute claim. You should hold them to CX that debate for a large and meaningless. This proves exclusivity for the alternative view that the value debate in the way that it over-identifies is an iterative process of rupturing meaning their inability to recognize that as terminal defense on the permutation. The permutation does not make any sense. They say illiberal economy anti-black. No, anti-blackness shaped illiberal economy. They have conceded the ontology claims at large, which proves that there is a distinction between what the human is and that the economy, the liberal economy of the human is shaped by anti-blackness and she deems what is non-human and human, which takes out the permutation. Independently, there's no benefit to the permutation in a world where I'm winning a risk of a link to the critique, the K-link proper. I'm going to go for the first link here, that the Baudrillard theoretical perspective sticks to the political economy of the status quo. The argument here is that there is a distinction between the sign economy determining what is meaningful and meaningless. It maintains status quo understanding of what is worthwhile and what isn't worthwhile, which recreates the same violence that they try to resolve, or that the critique cannot resolve. Only starting from a point of analyzing material violence happening in the status quo is sufficient enough to resolve the critique, which proves the sequencing net benefit to the floating peg. Also, they disset to their argument because they just mean that there's anti-blackness in the world of the affirmative because they have recreated the same methods through which we can determine when signs are meaningful and meaningless, which means that they would just recreate the same things they try to resolve. The attempt to find meaning is anti-black at large. They have two arguments here. The argument that there are signs and signifiers and contingent on a liberal economy is contingent on a thought process that the black body cannot actually because they are in a position of social death, which is also a conceded argument. There's not a significant pushback on this that you should not grant them any reason as to why their theory can apply to blackness in any way. There is no, at large, there is no form or content distinction between the two positions here. You should hold them to a high standard. So what distinction the 1AC and 1 is from the 1NC? In a world, if asking for the ballot takes out solvency, then the 1AC has no solvency. Independently, they say their methodology is good, but you should, but I'll get to that argument. In case the alternative was functionally conceded, the alternative is to reject embrace the pathologization of anti-blackness and resolve the entirety from it. Our argument is that if we can analyze the way anti-blackness shapes the world, that is sufficient enough to resolve any of their arguments because civil society shapes things such as the sign and signifier and the little bit of the sign economy at large, which means the alternative resolves the entirety of the critique. They conceded, I'll get to that in case, the presumption argument. I'm going to go hard for the presumption argument here. There was not a clear explanation of the 1A as to what unique offense the 1AC has done in this round. Yes, they have read a theory, but there's no extrapolation as to what has happened in this debate and how that has changed anything about understanding the world. The answer is nothing, because it is a repetition of the same 1AC that they have continuously read over and over again, which is the independent reason to drop them. They have conceded there. You can cross-apply the overview arguments on the critique. That's why our discussion is good, because it is on the fringe of analysis, that analysis that we engage in uniquely good. There was no answer to this in the 1AR as to pushback. Which proves our theory and discussion is better than anything the 1AC has engaged in. After which proves you should vote heavily. You should err heavily on the presumption argument. There only in a risk that I'm winning. That debate is a good space to have this discussion is key to bolster that argument. I'm going to go for this argument that there is no, the distinction that Baudrillard theory comes from television is distinct from debate, which means they cannot cross-apply their theory to the debate space, because there is a fundamental difference between what information is spewed over a CNN news broadcast and what happens in a debate space. That there is a engagement and discussion between politically aware students who can create new theories and have those interactions, which is distinct from anything the 1AC has criticized. There was no extrapolation as to how those theories can apply in the debate space, which is the reason that's why our discussion in the space is good and why and why that allows us to engage in a better discussion than the 1AC. There was no pushback on this, and additionally, they have also can see things such as the speed argument, which that reading at a faster speed creates the same articulation collapses civil society's understanding of the sign economy, because when we talk at a faster speed, it becomes unarticulate for normal people to understand, which would also be a reason as to why, which is why debate space is a good reason. There was no pushback overall on the distinction between our form and content. If there's any risk I'm winning a form or my form and content are good, that is sufficient enough to you on the NG block in this case. At large, the only two arguments that you can vote for this argument that I use blackness as the best. But insofar as I'm winning that there's a truth level to the critique in some way that is sufficient enough for you to affirm it. You can group all their arguments that they made on critique, because they're all contingent on there not being any meaning to debate or having any form of information. But insofar as I'm winning a risk that is sufficient enough for you to vote independently, you should just vote off the voting issue that was entirely dropped coming out of the 1A, that there's a good reason to talk about material consequences that the 1AC ignores by trying to perfect their theory, which will always ignore material consequences. There was no answer to this, which outweighs anything, because it's probably good to talk about real world consequences that are happening in actual violence. Independently, if they try to cross-apply their critique, you should not grant that, because the voter criticizes the same action that the 1AC took.
I'll take that.
I want to say they just did. Well, I want to say they did unless it was salute. Because I'm pretty sure my brother walked through. Yeah, hold on, they did. There is a first time. Thank you. So it wasn't amazing for women
Case K. Anyone already? Oh.
They have strawmanned or affirmative, not read books, and claim some sort of moral superiority. This is charity cannibalism that they have performed in the debate space. As long as we win this argument, it takes out every single argument about them claiming to a good education about anti-blackness or fostering a rigorous analysis, because they have not done that. Our thesis is that the West operates through a violent consumption of images of suffering. The way that information is spectacularized and reduced to mere blips to be methodologically darkened on the radar screen. This is the function of communication today that have not answered. It's not just about TV screens, but rather about the very communication negative process itself. Now, they say that vote negative on presumption. However, you've conceded that as long as we've won that the affirmative is a motive challenging that communicative form by recognizing our complicity to use information against itself to reveal the absurdity at the heart of all communicative processes. The only way that debaters can acknowledge complicity in that form of colonial process proves that there is at least a link differential between voting affirmative and voting negative. A performative dissent to the negative is a sufficient reason to vote affirmative to force them to come to terms with the lack of neutrality in this space. It's a fundamental dissent to a negative ballot, and a reason why you should vote affirmative. It answers we have answered their television, and other people have. We don't trade the collapse debate, which means that debate good isn't offense for them. Our argument is that we just need a different way of relating to the world that isn't held bent on transparent metaphysics, which is violent. Which is why you should use your ballot as a signal to a commitment to a metaphysics of mystery and unintelligibility. It solves the criticism better. That'll be on the other page. Now you say that reading it fast. You also spread, which means that this is not unique offense. You say the true level of the cadence of voting issue. Simply asserting that something is a voting issue doesn't make it a voting issue. This claim, we also answered it despite me not saying the words voting issue. Our argument is that you've also perfected a theory by assigning a role to blackness. Also, as long as you win offensively criticism, it proves that our theory is valuable, which takes out this flippy argument. The critique. Not answering our Juleps evidence means that you should vote for the permutation because all of their answers assume that they've won their thesis about how blackness operates, but they have dropped too many arguments. First is that blackness represents big unknowability. However, the regime of truth and semiotics attempts to bring blackness into the fold of Western metaphysics, which is the generative point of gratuity because we try to rationalize what is unknowable, which means that only the app saws blackness is not ontological and semiotic. Proven by the middle passage, blackness was incoherent before the slave trade. Proves that blackness was not something ontological, or rather governed the systems of the regimes and signs and signifiers. To believe that their ability to diagnose black suffering ignores that their signification of social death is what causes their impact. Think about viral videos of Black Death. More than opening up the possibility for liberation, as per how they've suggested, it seems to suture the relationship between the mythical and the real. It creates the same sort of knee-jerk experience, the death of blackness, over and over and over again. The world recycles that fiction as a real. How can they claim to generate rigorous analysis or provide good education when they've conceded the revolutionary fantasy day? The analysis on case proves that they reproduce black fungibility in the level of form via their claim to moral superiority, which means that as long as we won that argument, the floating pig doesn't do shit for them because we have wanted just such to them presenting this argument in the first place, and we've answered their arguments about how we do the same thing through the link differential argument on the case page. You say the permutation doesn't make sense because it's liberal humanism. No, you create liberal humanism because you've dropped that the alternative doesn't solve because it assigns a role to blackness and makes blackness an opposable term, which implies both terms of their singularity. Good debate.
This was a good debate. I voted F. I think the F has a strategy capable of exposing, rupturing whatever the inherent absurdity of communication or communicative capacities in debate. I think that most of my decision comes down to a matter of sequencing and depth in the 2 NR versus like the 2, or the NR, sorry, is to me super repetitive on a lot of claims, but doesn't have a lot of like deep warrants or doesn't do that sequencing work for me, which is the most frustrating part of this debate. Why I take it till 3 minutes till decision time is because I have to kind of put those things in order for everyone. I think that the NR's push on debate good or debate is a good place to have this discussion is the wrong move, because I think the F is making more of a prior critique about the manner by which debate essentially corrupts these discussions, even if it is a form worth existing or being in or just doing normal stuff in. They aren't going for just debate bad, but that the current state of debate necessitates more the generation and circulation of tragic images. And even if you think there's some intrinsic value in the scholarship you present in its writing from Wilderson and Warren and stuff like that, the negative impacts of its presentation simply outweighs. And I don't think you've done enough work in terms of showing how when that presentation necessarily ruptures the way that type of literature would be criminalized in the status quo, the way that understandings of blackness and ontology and social death and things like that don't get just reduced and then also get recirculated for ballots and stuff like that. One is more of a question of what controls semiotics. I think that the neg is extremely light here. You keep kind of parroting this phrase that blackness structures the libidinal economy, post-mental passage, and yes, true, but you have little warrant as to why here. There's no discussion of things like white desire and how that type of desire is played out. I mean, you could do something from Hartman or Spillers here, but really even an explanation of just the 3 tenets of social death. The closest you ever do this is just here's what like social death is and like cross-sects of the 1AC, but there's never, or and cross-sects of the 1NC, but there's never a discussion in terms of like why your link debate that you go for in the NR like necessarily like controls the internal link of the way that we like come to understand and interact with these images in the first place. By comparison, I do think this like Gillespie evidence is like pretty nice, even if it's not like the best card I've ever read. It at least gives like some warrant as to like how the enunciation of blackness as nothingness is only possible within like a white system of grammar. And I think that the permutation result is probably like any residual impact to the link arc that you go for in the NR. The alternative, I think everyone could probably be a lot better on this debate, especially in just terms of like judge instruction or I guess from like the AF pointing out the really odd nature of asking like a light-passing native judge to embrace the pathologization of like blackness and like what the hell that phrase means, right? Or it's necessarily like implications for how like other people like then orient themselves towards that form of like relationality, right? It's like probably a little bit better than that. Like the biggest piece of offense here you go for in terms of like here's like relationship to this argument is more just the fungibility arts, but I think you need to make a broader claim, right? If you're going for more like the charity cannibalism, like pornotropy stuff, of how that type of relationship then gets scripted throughout the rest of the debate as well, in which certain types of like negative relations then become like sanctioned because of like some desire to like understand like our proximity to blackness and stuff like that. I think that would be better for me here in terms of the neg is going more into an explanation of like Warren's writing explaining to me why embracing this like pathologization of blackness like has the capacity to rupture like libidinal desires, and I think this is more just like a solvency question writ large. The material like independent voter thing, I'm not like really sure what like the link differential here is, considering by like the NR like you are also like pure theory. There's no like discussion of the way that material violence gets like enacted against like black bodies. Like it's obviously true, right? But like that type of like technical work isn't done by you. So I have like other thoughts, but if you have questions.
All right, I just have a couple questions. So you believe that the 1AC is not a critique of like just debate bad, but it's something a little bit more nuanced than that. What do you think is then a better response in the NR to that argument?
In terms of just like what to do in debate?
Well, as opposed to our response
like,
of being like debate education, or education that we get from debate is good.
I think the better argument is just like debate is anti-black as hell, right? And that the app is nothing more than an attempt to try to recuperate some type of value from it. They realize that it's kind of broken down and they want to make it more efficient in some manner, right? If like the app doesn't have like a truly pessimistic approach, right, and kind of has this attempt to just like show the absurdity of it to then move forward in some manner, right, then I think you should just go more for the argument that like debate is nothing more than a microcosm of like larger systems of like anti-blackness, and instead you should probably just call debate bad and just say that this type of like attempts at recuperation are like terminally bad.
Do you think it would be possibly a good argument to say that the 1AC's kind of idea that the criticism could possibly change debate, i.e. make it a better forum and have a form of progress is something that we should be criticizing? That's the kind of...
Okay. That's what I'm saying, where it's like, I think the AF makes more of the strategic move, where it's not just saying like, debate's like always good, but like, they're, I don't know, I think the strategic move by the AF is to be like, look, we're not saying all debate's bad. If that's the case, I think you should just like, out-left them there. And just go for like, yeah.
Because I mean, my understanding before was just of the AF was that the kind of, I guess, the antagonism in the kind of different styles of debate and the way in which we treat each other within the space is bad, and that kind of thinking should be, I don't know, criticized and or changed. Maybe I'm wrong on that, I don't know, but that's the way I interpreted the AF.
I think like on face value, it's definitely presented as such. I think it's just more of like cross-ex and like speech spin that comes out later, where it's like, the AF makes the clear move to be like, look, we're not trying to like break debate or shit like that. Like we think it's a good space to like do certain things, and I think like, I'm not sure where that goes off the rails.
Okay.
Do you think the voter argument can be a viable 2NR if there's more of a link differential flushed out?
Sure. I think that needs to be paired with the argument I was just talking about there in terms of just like debate value at large. Right? And I think your argument needs to be like debate is always in that process of like theoretical refinement, right? At the expense of paying attention to certain forms of material violence. Instead, like, maybe break debate in favor of just those, like, interactions with material violence, stuff like that.
Thank you.
Yeah, the Grande card, I don't really know why it's here. Seems like a weird shout out to like natives at some point that no one ever talks about ever again. Like one of your arguments, or one of the cross-ex questions, like I realized that like after the Warren question, you're like, you know what, screw it. Like I'm just done with cross-ex.
Yeah.
Or like maybe just before that, ask about like how they theorize indigeneity in relation to like blackness. Like Grande is probably not the best card to read with that, especially like the more previous versions. I don't know. I just thought it was weird.